Are you licking my leg? Ladybug, get up here. Let's bring you over. Sorry, I have to touch up my roots, y'all. Great. I'm telling you that your parents would tell you that it'll go by fast, youth, but they didn't explain in your 30s is when it starts, like mid 30s, where stuff starts to go to shit. Now I'm 46 and it's not any better. Good night. It is Arena the White Rose, and today let's go ahead and redo the first part and about an extra few more minutes because I didn't realize when I did the Henry VIII Anne Boleyn, and I do first reactions, so I don't lie. I am very honest about that. So I kept it, but it had a horrific echo. And so the first like 10 minutes or something like that I have heard, but I also have aphasia and short term memory. So it's almost like 51st dates. It's kind of that kind of ish. The reality of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn relationship, lovers who changed history. And this is from the channel of Chronicle Medieval History Documentaries. And there's so much on this channel, and I love it. And the direct link will be below if you just want to watch their channel instead of listening what I think about the history of Henry VIII. All right. I think I got it in the right spot. It might. Oh, yeah, we're going to start over. That's right. Okay, we got it. Please like, sharing is caring. And I do have a surgery coming on the 8th. Please, whatever you believe in, prayers, positive energy, vibes, whatever. I do believe no matter what belief system you're in, it sends out its energy, positive energy. All right, let's go ahead. Hit it.
Anne Boleyn, the wife of Henry VIII, awoke in the royal apartments at the Tower of London.
Her ladies-in-waiting made their final preparations. Anne left her chambers at a little before 8 o'clock to face her destiny. Awaiting her at the end of this short journey was an expert executioner, famed for his skills with a razor-sharp blade.
He just arrived from France, summoned by the king as a last-minute act of mercy for a wife for whom he'd risked everything, but whom he ultimately believed had betrayed him.
The lives of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn have been cloaked in historical myth, romantic legend, clichés and half-truths.
Henceforth my heart shall be dedicated to you alone.
Their turbulent relationship continues to spark fierce debate.
True.
I am entirely innocent of all these accusations.
I'll be retracing the footsteps of this extraordinary couple, piecing together the fragments of evidence.
Okay, I was super excited when they showed the actual real locations, like the Boleyn home.
King as a last-minute act of mercy for a wife for whom he'd risked everything, but whom he ultimately believed had betrayed him.
The lives of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn have been cloaked in historical myth, romantic legend, clichés and half-truths.
Henceforth my heart shall be dedicated to you alone.
Their turbulent relationship continues to spark fierce debate.
I am entirely innocent of all these accusations.
I'll be retracing the footsteps of this extraordinary couple,
So cool.
piecing together the fragments of evidence that have survived to discover what brought Henry and Anne together and what ultimately tore them apart.
We all know how this tragedy plays out, but how well do we know its leading characters? This is the story of Henry and Anne.
Beautiful the way they titled that.
My journey begins in the Kent countryside, in search of Anne Boleyn.
Have a dual screen.
Her symbol was a falcon, used to extol her purity, her chastity, and her grace. There's a popular myth that Anne was from lowly origins, that she was a bit of an upstart, but that's far from the truth.
This is Hever Castle, the seat of the Boleyns. It's Anne Boleyn's childhood home, where she spent many years. Here her parents, Thomas and Elizabeth, brought up the 3 children who made it to adulthood. The eldest was Mary, who fleetingly later would be a mistress to Henry VIII. Probably the youngest was George, who was a great companion to Anne, a bright young girl who would one day be queen.
Boy George.
Her father, Thomas Boleyn, was a member.
I love the movie The Other Boleyn Girl. And that is a way different stories that are on that movie. Oh, so I have the series of the books Philippina Gregory. I think I put it on the last time. I'll put it on there. Hold on. I have it still, I think. Yes, it is Philippina Gregory that had the novel series, and it is not the same. But definitely check out the book series if you want to get to know way more about the Boleyn sisters and the Boleyn's family period. So let me go back where I was. Sorry about that.
Member of the King's Council and Henry VIII's ambassador to France. Anne was well educated and from a wealthy, privileged family.
They were privileged. I didn't think that.
The story goes that she was a free spirit, someone who was sparky, intelligent and fun-loving.
Must be a Gemini.
But this is based as much on rumour and speculation as any hard evidence.
It's so hard to get a sense of the real Anne Boleyn. We have a few letters, but we don't have any diaries. We don't really have any of the sort of things that we need to get a grasp on what she was really like. And yet, when you come to a place like this, where she actually lived, one has this incredible sense that the veil between past and present has grown thin, and only time and not space separates us from Anne.
I love that part of her saying that because I'll go back on that.
Fortunately, a few telling pieces of evidence have survived, which give us a rare glimpse into her character.
This is one of the few surviving possessions of Anne at Hever. It's a book of hours. It's a beautifully illustrated and illuminated manuscript book of prayers and devotions, and these things were immensely popular in Europe at the time. And what's really exciting about it is that Anne held it. There's something of a real thrill to be touching it. It was probably one of her most treasured possessions. What this reminds us is the importance of faith at this time. It literally determined people's hours. Religion marked out their days. We often have an idea of Anne in our heads that's of her as being ambitious and worldly and perhaps something of a vixen. And yet, this is one of her few belongings that we know and can identify. It reminds us that Anne is pious and religious. But what's even more thrilling about it is that Anne herself wrote in it.
History Hit is like
so
Netflix,
cool.
just for history fans. With exclusive history documentaries covering some of the most famous people and events in history, just for you. With familiar faces such as Dan Jones and Dr. Eleanor Janega, we've got hundreds of documentaries covering the greatest figures and events of medieval history. We're committed to bringing history fans award-winning
committed
documentaries
too,
and
y'all.
podcasts that you cannot find anywhere
Touching
else. Sign up now for a free
Anne
trial.
Boleyn.
And Chronicle fans get
For
50% off their
belongings.
first
That's
3
crazy.
months. Just be sure to use the code CHRONICLE at checkout.
It's an inscription in French, and it says, Le temps viendra, je Anne Boleyn. The time will come, I Anne Boleyn.
The time will come. I, Anne Boleyn.
Now, we don't know when she wrote this. We don't know exactly what she meant by it, but it seems immensely prophetic and powerful. It's on
It sounds like a manifestation. Remember, I have aphasia. I have a hard time with my words. Yeah, you know what I mean. I should start doing that more often.
a page where there's a picture of
Affirmations.
Christ being raised above the earth, and then there are these little heads at the bottom that look like people coming up out of the grave. So perhaps this refers to the Day of Judgment. Many people in the 16th century thought that they were living in the end times, the last days before the second coming of Christ.
Everybody says
But
that.
perhaps there's a more
still.
earthly explanation. I wonder if Anne thought that she was destined for greatness.
I think everybody should try
All
at
our doings
least.
being ordered by thy
Even if she was ambitious, Anne could never have imagined that her destiny would lie with the most powerful man in the land, a married man,
Amen.
the king.
The
We all think we know Henry VIII, but actually what we conjure up is Henry in the last decade of his life when he's obese and savage and ruthless and cruel. But he wasn't always like that.
He ran out of biscuits,
In fact,
y'all.
when he first came to the throne and for the first 20 or so years of his reign, he was noted, first of all, for being really good looking. He had auburn hair, he was very tall, he was 6'2" when the average height was 5'7½".
Wow.
And he was so good at sport that everyone commented on it. He surpassed all the archers of his guard. He was a fine jouster, a capital horseman. To see him play tennis, one Venetian ambassador commented, was the prettiest thing in the world. That Venetian ambassador also said, perhaps he had a crush, that he had a round face so very beautiful that it would become a pretty woman. But the thing that was most surprising to me, coming across this young Henry, was that he was also well loved. He was considered to be kind. The ambassador said that he was affable and gracious, a man who harmed no one. Erasmus said that he was a man of gentle friendship and gentle in debate. He acts more like a companion than a king. Henry was evidently very charismatic. When he spoke to you, it was like the sun was shining.
charismatic people will drop draws. You know what I mean? That is probably, there are people that are not very attractive, but they got game. And yeah, that's my opinion on that, anyways.
As a king and a man, he seemed to have few flaws. But Henry would become tormented by his failure to perform the most basic, yet most important task of any monarch. It would put him on a collision course with Anne, and together they would change England forever.
All right. So I listened, that first part I've already reacted to. So now on, I haven't seen any more on here. Honest E, y'all. I try to be as honest as possible to y'all. Yeah. February 18th. Needs that male heir.
Henry VIII wasn't born to be king. He'd come to the throne after the death of his father Henry VII, and only because his older brother Arthur had died suddenly at the age of just 15. Within months of becoming king, Henry married his brother's widow, Catherine of Aragon.
Oh,
They were
okay, it's kind of like Game of Thrones. I didn't know that, or if I forgot or whatever. Kind of like when Joffrey and then he was poisoned. You know what I mean? And so then the brother took the wife. So I'm wondering if that was common, or did they took some of that from England history onto Game of Thrones? Please put it in the comments if you know the answer.
crowned together. But with marriage came a huge pressure. Now he needed to produce an heir to secure the dynasty for the next generation. And not just one, he needed an heir and a spare, as his brother's death had indicated. Henry would be married to Catherine for over 20 years, and for much
That's
of
a
that
long
time they were
time.
happy together. But they were beset by a devastating series of miscarriages and stillbirths. When a son, Henry, was born, he died 52 days later.
No.
Mary would be the only child to survive.
Oh, that is so sad. So sad. Mary would be the only child to survive.
Most people at the time saw little value in a female heir, as she would likely end up marrying a European prince, allowing England to be dominated by a foreign power. And France and Spain were a constant threat throughout Henry's reign. So siring a legitimate heir became Henry's overriding obsession. It was an obsession that would manifest itself in Henry's relationship with God, by whom he believed he had been anointed king. This lack of a surviving legitimate male heir suggested to Henry VIII that he was being punished by God. And he suspected the reason was that he had married his brother's widow. And scriptures backed him up in this. In Leviticus it says, in chapter 18, verse 16, "You shall not uncover the nakedness of your brother's wife. It is your brother's nakedness." And chapter 20, verse 21 says, "If a man takes his brother's wife, it is impurity. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They shall be childless."
Wow, that is interesting. But the brother was not alive still. He had passed away. What does that mean then?
Henry's theological experts assured him that childless, in this instance, actually meant no sons.
While England waited for an heir to the throne, the teenage Anne had crossed the Channel and was embracing all that Europe had to offer. After some time in the Netherlands, her father found her a role in the French court, which would become a defining influence in her life.
Little is known of Anne's 9 years on the continent, and yet much is always made of it. It certainly was a formative period of her life. It was the period when she was educated, and people in the 16th century and today have speculated in a kind of prurient nudge nudge wink wink kind of way that at the French court particularly she learned the art of love.
I want to see for myself how Anne's time in France shaped her character.
I should say something because I was saying, like, men being charismatic, women got game too. You know what I mean? They got all the game.
I'm travelling to the Chateau de Blois, one of the palaces where the French king, Francis I, held his court.
Oh,
I can
wow.
only imagine what the young Anne must have felt when she first arrived here.
I've never been here before, and it's really exciting.
Anne would be a lady-in-waiting to the cultured and pious French queen, Claude.
She was, what?
Didn't do things by halves, did they? Look.
She was the lady in waiting in France too. That's something I didn't know. Hopefully I'm understanding it properly.
Look at this place. My word.
It was the most fashionable court in Europe, reflected in its spectacular architecture.
How were they able to do that at
This
that
is an
age?
extraordinary sort of Renaissance style.
Oh, that's
You've got
beautiful.
little classical statues up the top here and all these columns and this amazing spiral staircase. It's so incredibly beautiful, this staircase.
I have to tell you something. A passion also that I have is architecture, and I love that. There's a feel, I always say it, that, make sure I don't burp. Porquita. Okay, so, that used to be a palace, that court, and all these people and it busy, and I just don't understand how all those palaces were built with such beautiful architecture and so strong, and it's lasted from forever. You know, it's crazy. I have a lot of passion for that.
It would have been such an extraordinary time for Anne when she was here, because she was here with Claude of France, who herself was a real patron of the arts. Francis I, her husband, was so much a fan of the Renaissance that he invited Leonardo da Vinci to France, and he was installed just down the road. There's every chance that Anne might have met him. So basically, Anne would have been surrounded by this world of intellectual endeavour and artistic endeavour. It must have been such an exciting place to be. I'm out of breath now.
Anne came of age in France. One observer later wrote that no one would ever have taken her to be English by her manners, but a native-born Frenchwoman.
Wow.
That is beautiful.
What might Anne have learnt at this court?
The first thing, of course, is French, because French was a very important language at that time. It was something like the English today in the northern courts of Europe. We just know that she must have been at some very important events, such as when the English ambassadors came to France in 1518, or at the Field of the Cloth of Gold, because she must there have played an important role as an interpreter between the English and the French. She received a European education, and she was really different from the young ladies who just stayed in England.
Anne also saw firsthand what was required to fulfill the essential role of a queen. Her mistress Claude gave birth to 7 children in 8 years, including 3 sons, something Henry and Catherine could only dream of. Claude was also extremely pious, so it's unlikely that her court was a hotbed of promiscuity.
Cedric, one of the things that's often said about Anne's time in France, with probably little evidence from what you've said so far, is that there's kind of this idea that somehow she's learned all about sex while she's been at the court.
I'll listen to that.
Do you think this is at all plausible?
Yeah, my opinion would be that it's not true, but it may be true. We don't know. We have no evidence. I don't think there was a clear difference at that time between the court of Francis I and the court of Henry VIII.
Our first surviving letter from Anne was written to her father and shows her aspirations to be accepted in the English court.
Sir, I understand by your letter that you wish that I shall be of all virtuous repute when I come to court. And you inform me that the Queen will take the trouble to converse with me, which rejoices me greatly. To think of talking with a person so wise and virtuous. Written at 5 o'clock by your very humble and obedient daughter, Anna de Boulogne.
I like how they did that. I definitely want to keep the channel of Chronicle Medieval History documentaries because it's not boring to me anyways. And it just, I like the acting and everything. It's not all cheesy or anything, not to me anyways. Let's wrap it up in a couple minutes. Let's see what else she has to say.
We tend to think about Anne Boleyn in black and white terms. So she's either a sexual predator or she's sexually chaste. She's either pious or she's worldly. She's either innocent or sophisticated. And yet, actually, what I've learned here is that her French education, her time at the French court, was such that it prepared her to be a much more complex character than that.
Her 9 years on the continent.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I got a little creeped out. I had to turn on my light. I'm scared of the dark. It's late. It's in America, in United States, down here at Kansas City, Missouri. It is past midnight, 4th of July. Please have a safe holiday. I have a feeling there's going to be a bunch of idiots doing stupid-ish for the holiday, for the 4th of July. Lots of love, and if you want some more, please show interest so that I know that you like what I'm doing. So also, if you don't know, I do music reactions, and I also like to do behind the scenes, sometimes doing makeup. And I've been on my channel for 5 years, and I'm still proud and happy, even though it's taken me longer, it feels like other people, but I'm a little slow with learning things, and yeah, I'm done talking. Lots of love. Ba-ba, ba-ba, yeah, yeah. Oh, and music suggestions as well. Yes.